Word. And welcome everybody today. I'm really excited to listen to Marti and see what kind of probing questions she invites us to reflect on and engage in a conversation around. But before we do that, I'd like to just do a little preview of our upcoming calls. Daniel is going to do a state of sustainability conversation next month, June 17th. And then we're going to take July off. And then Christine Haskell, who's spent a career in high tech and AI and data management, is going to talk about AI and leadership and some of the deeper kind of questions and challenges all of that poses us. We have an opening in September, so if anybody has a topic that they would like to facilitate, we can do that on September 16th. Frank Altdeweed is going to do a nice piece in October the 21st, and that's going to be on kind of an underlying structure that helps people learn how to co-create and co-design things with people. And then Mary Ellen's going to do something in November on I can't remember the date, but I can look it up. And you want to say what your topic is, Mary Ellen?
I'm going to ask for your thoughts on my doctoral dissertation, which is Regenerative Leadership and Lifelong Learning, or the concept of longevity for us. And what are we and how are we transitioning through the different passages of our much longer lived lives?
Nice. And then we'll be off for December. So that's kind of what we've set up for the year. And now I want to pass it off to Marti, who's just returning from a wonderful experience in Peru. And she always asks great questions and provokes deeper thinking and consciousness. So thank you so much for being willing to share. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, great. It's great to be here. And thank you guys for gathering with me to discuss a very big question. The question might be a little difficult sometimes if we look at it through lessons, but what we want to explore today is this principle of assembling our reality. And I'm going to be talking to you from the perspective of all the indigenous initiations that I carry. And these are actual initiations. They're not westernized. I work directly with elders in about half a dozen different lineages. And I'm focused now in the Andean lineages, which are quite unique to us as Westerners because they hold their human wisdom in terms of energy and energy interactions and energy principles. So basically, they live in relationship to the universe and to the world of our natural world where humans and plants and animals mix. They hold their understanding of how to participate in terms of energy, and we might say in terms of physics. So it's very important for us, and it's actually very easy for Westerners to absorb this. I won't be talking to you from my Himalayan initiations where we would have to talk about 20-armed goddesses with 5 vehicles and 1,000 retinue deities and a name longer than we can pronounce. We're going to be talking about energy, right? And actually, we're going to be talking about how our neurophysiology works. So what is this business of assembling reality? We could talk about this in a lot of different ways. But first, before I ask you a question, I want to make very clear that Western science has trundled along very, very slowly after all the indigenous elders have been holding original human wisdom for eons. Western science comes along and says, oh, when we're dreaming, we're assembling our reality. Gee, this is the neurophysiologists who were just started to study the neurophysiology of dreaming in the 1950s.
Mm.
They're rediscovering what the elders have known for probably at least 40,000 years, right? But we do, in our dream time, beyond the level of the ego structure. I want you to remember that. Beyond the level of whatever the ego is supposed to be doing, we have a huge consciousness. We're processing data that is incoming from the world. We're exploring, we're putting data bits together, we're trying out scenarios, we're problem solving. Even in the dream time, you'll dream about living a solution to a challenge. And if you remember those dreams and you wake up and you take action on it, the neuronal pathways for that new way of behaving are already in your brain. And so this is why indigenous people have always known to pay attention to their dreams and take action on them. So we are already just biologically, quote unquote, assembling our reality. And what I'm talking about is instead of coming from my ego, does that have to do with me? Do I have to defend against this? What we actually do naturally is we shape our participation in life. We look ahead, we have an experience, and we say, okay, this is a way to interact with my world, to participate in the world and receive from the world. And that's how I assemble my reality. If I assemble my reality from my emotional reactivity, I'm essentially saying to myself, well, I'm pissed off about this thing that happened last week and I'm going to goddamn live it for that's assembling a reality. If you come to your day with your anger and your old unresolved stuff, that's what you're going to get. So this is what indigenous people mean in the, at least at the beginning level, about assembling your reality. So I wanted to start really, I want to hear a little bit from all of you, because the juice of this kind of discussion comes from our talking together, not me talking at you. I'd like to hear from any of you if you've got some sense of how you assemble your reality. Do you have a sense that you do that? How do you come to your day? Anybody? And let yourself say something you've never said before. There's no right answer.
I can share if you
Yeah,
yeah.
Maria. Yep.
So yeah, I what you just shared deeply touched me because it's the way that I actually assemble my reality.
Mhm.
As I'm connected to the Akasha as well, so I can
Yeah.
read through, and this is also how I mean, you call it dreams, you call it Akasha, whatever you want to call it, it's the
Mhm.
same feel, right?
Yeah.
So by accessing to that, which is basically our nature, what we had forgotten. So by
Yes.
accessing to that, I can actually touch on my reality and co-create with that, right? See what is
Exactly.
possible and coming back and see,
Mhm.
okay, what can I do to actually do this, right? That is already in my field.
Yeah, beautiful response. And this is a really important point that you'll find in all indigenous cultures, is that part of assembling reality with great skill is having a relationship with something bigger than ourselves. Then we're in the experience. Experience is an important word. We're in the experience of being part of that bigger thing. We're not battling it. So beautiful. Maria, thank you. That's great.
The way I would describe it for me is I feel like I'm very much in a co-creative state with the
Oh,
day. I've learned a long time ago that over planning doesn't get me anywhere because
yeah.
they're always changing. And so
Right.
for me, it's a practice of being present and being open to what I'm sensing and then being able to engage and interact with that. So
Yeah.
it really feels like my posture in life is more of a co-creation and emergence rather
Hmm.
than a set, here's what I plan to accomplish or do,
Mm-hmm.
which has a lot of friction with a lot of people in my life who are more Western linear
Right.
planning,
Right.
including in my own business and how people think about the work we do, which I think is very co-creative with our partners, but other people think of it a little bit more linearly.
Oh, I feel you, Daniel, really. But this is really important. This principle of presence is a core principle of consciousness. And the principle of emergence, each of us, if we're sufficiently conscious, the universe is literally moving through us, and we become, the Quechua word is pacarina. We each become a place of emergence. And the reality that we quote unquote assemble, it's not a rigid thing that we set up ahead of time. It's occurring through us moment to moment. And the assembling has to do with the underlying principles of co-participation, of being a conduit. Instead of putting ourselves in the center, we become a central channel for what is emerging. Yeah, and it really, and the other principle you're touching on here is that to assemble reality is actually, if we're good at it, it's to be in our experience, to live in our experience instead of trying to define our experience all the time. It's to be in participation all the time. And I think that, I mean, that's really brilliant. And I want to say, even the first two of you who've responded, what we're talking about is the natural human condition. We were talking before everybody joined us, and I was describing the mystery schools that used to exist in so many cultures. That's our word. Basically Hogwarts, where people went to learn visionary skills and consciousness skills and so on. It's natural to us. We have all these capacities, but we're not born knowing how to be expert in them. Yeah. But when we mature in Western culture, if we're grounded enough, these natural capacities open, and we sense, Daniel, like you just described, there's a much more efficient, dynamic, productive way to be creating in the world. And what you described, that's it. And it will rankle a whole lot of people who are still Western and require an external rigid definition and framework. Otherwise, they don't know what to do. So we are talking about assembling our reality moment to moment via experience, whereas a lot of people in the Western world assemble their reality via an external predetermined rigid structure. Gee, which one would I choose? Right? And if it's a predetermined rigid structure, it's based on the past. And so those people will be more and more, as the Paco say, Paco means shaman or elder. If you're structured, are likely to be claimed by your past than be able to be present in the moment, responding to life. Yeah. So we're assembling our reality via presence, via experience, via a dynamic relationship with something bigger than us, which means we know we're part of a bigger living system, and we also know we're inextricable from that system. We might think we're separate, but not. Yeah. All right. You guys are lovely. So we're finding out what it is to assemble reality through your own experience. Anybody else? What's this sparking?
I agree with everything that's been said. I also have found that, and it took me years to realize, on a conscious level, I'm a very divergent thinker.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see connections continually. And so a singular theory or a thought process doesn't enable me to respond quickly. I usually have to let it mull around and stew, and then it slowly begins to emerge because of the significance of that interaction with so many different parts that make the whole.
Right. Yeah. That's a beautiful encapsulation of everything we've described so far. Being present being that pacarina, that place of emergence as the universe moves through us, reality comes into being. We are assembling reality moment to moment. We're guided by experience, not predetermined external definitions, theories, God only knows what. We're working with, neurologically, we're working with real-time sensory data, Mary Ellen, the way you're describing it. And it's good to be at least cautious, if not totally suspicious, of hardcore theories and theorems and so on and so forth. I mean, myself, I come from a short but very illustrious lineage of scientists. My dad basically discovered RNA when he was a graduate student. So that's what I grew up with. But the only way he could do that was to vision it, to be in the moment, experiencing well, basically what happened was people didn't think that bacteria were living organisms. They thought they were inorganic. And my dad said it can't be possible because they replicate, so they have to have genetic material of some sort. So my dad was in the experience and everybody else was holding to a rigid external idea. So in the experience, that's how reality gets assembled, and we're using real-time data, and we do not need to know what's going to happen. Yeah, so that's really, really brilliant. So again, Mary Ellen, you're giving us a beautiful description of what it is to assemble our reality in full consciousness. And we're
I think
discerning. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just thinking as you're saying this of how I feel about future planning
Oh,
and
yeah.
people who love goal setting. And in so many different jobs, it sounded like a complete dead end to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't a goal for the future, it was an endpoint right here and now.
Yeah.
And I think what that's enabled me to have a better understanding, and this would be a tough one in a lot of ways for me to explain, but it's like there are alternative timescapes.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that becomes an essential part of enabling and encouraging that emergent thinking, that divergent thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Okay, you've just brought up so many beautiful things. First of all, I think that Western people should throw out the idea of thinking altogether because we know things through experience of sensory data. That's a neurological fact. Thinking is way after the fact, and language is way after the fact. Thinking, thoughts and language are outcomes. Yeah. And we learn instantly. It's like imagine putting your hand on a hot stove. Do you have to get out the thermometer and measure the temperature before you understand if it's too hot or not? Yeah, you instantly know. And your point about planning, this we're really on a I don't know, the end of a spear in the Western world about this, where people have to know what it's going to be like before they'll take an action. And intellectually, we know that's impossible. But Mary Ellen, what you're touching on is I think the world has come to a screeching halt around this issue. And this is a big point I made in my TEDx talk. What we've done in Western consciousness, instead of assembling our reality in relationship to the dynamic world around us, our awareness has gradually, for a lot of reasons, kind of sunk down to a layer of brain processing that is by its nature linear. And we have this function for a really good reason. We've grown huge brains over millions of years, and we take in billions of data bits per minute, and it all stays in there. And we have to have a way of sorting so we can get through our day. And so we have this very linear part of our brain. It takes a map from the rest of us that knows everything. We sort out a map for getting to the office and getting home again, as an example. And it's an A to B to C to B to A kind of map. And this linear part of our brain takes the map and says, yes, boss. And we walk out the door. And the way it's supposed to work is I go from A to B, and there's something I couldn't foresee at point B. So the map actually has a B prime. So instead of going down C Street in Santa Rosa, I might need to go down E Street. So I choose B prime instead of B, and then I get to the office and somehow I get home. But it's an if this, then that kind of map. There's an endpoint and sometimes a return point. It's supposed to function that way, but it cannot function on our behalf for our well-being if it's the only thing we're aware of.
Mhm.
And Western awareness has left the imagination, left the external world, and we're focused on, it's a generality, but in general, we're focused in this little linear place. And so we are focused on endpoints and goals and deadlines and predetermined this is and that's is. And we've forgotten if there's a B, there's a B prime. Look
Daniel,
at anything, business, community building, government, education, it's all down to that kind of processing. And it's, in terms of your brain, it's 2% of your brain that's doing that. The rest of us knows everything. So you are right to have an objection to that. Yeah, Daniel.
This is really resonating with me. So can I share what I think
Yeah.
you said and then ask a question? I think you just
Yeah.
said that it's a very important part of what we do and it plays a functional role, but we
Yeah.
often as Westerners, to generalize, have focused all of our attention on this small piece. Is that
Yeah.
right? Is that
Yeah.
okay? So
Exactly.
let me ask a question that formed before you talked about the map example, so maybe you can tell me it's not relevant. But in the world of assembling our reality, we do climate planning, right? We do the planning and we also do the acting, the implementation, and we joke that a plan is a lie committed to paper.
Mhm.
But in that process, we do find that when people participate in the visioning of what's possible, that gives some directional North Star that then helps them assemble a reality towards a desired outcome.
Yep.
Is that, from your perspective, a healthy way to think about that, or is that still way too limited?
It's definitely a leap in the right direction.
Okay.
So we're talking about in the moment the difference between assembling your reality via that little 2% brain processing capacity that we have, and instead, yeah, we vision. This is one of the beautiful things about humans. Why did we stand up? So we could see farther. Why did our foreheads go from slanty backward to big and full? Because we were using our capacity to see ahead and we grew more brain here. That's why we have upright foreheads instead of our poor Neanderthal relatives. But that's something we can do. We take in billions of data bits and we can know things before they manifest. Absolutely. And so in terms of climate, if we're working with climate as an example, we are assembling our reality by being in relationship with the climate. Aren't we? Where do the numbers come from? They come from the climate. And so if we use our research as a kind of relationship with the climate, we can begin to see propensities, we can begin to see trajectories, we can get an idea of where things could happen, what could happen, how fast it's coming. And as long as we don't rigidify it, here's how the elders talk about it. There is a map of becoming. That's their term for it. So let's say we're your group, Daniel, and we're working with climate. We're trying to find great solutions, and you guys are great visionaries. So you're becoming aware. You're bringing into visibility this map of becoming, what we could do to help improve the climate and our place in the big system. And then that map is, let's say, in the world above us. And here on the belly of the earth, we're day by day taking steps according to what we can see in the map. And every step we take, there's an evolution. There's a new piece of reality that emerges because we've engaged in a new way. And so we take in that data of what we've been able to accomplish and we look at the map. The map has also evolved in the same moment. So dynamic conscious, quote unquote, planning, what we would say in indigenous language is calling in a vision. And the vision is not fixed because every step we take evolves what's manifested. Every step we take evolves the map. And so you're constantly bringing what's manifested and the map together in as the conduit for creation. And so you're assembling reality. I hope my connection has any of those little messages, your internet is unstable. But anyway, you're assembling reality by being in relationship with the dynamic, intelligent, conscious universe. You're calling in information and energy that has not yet manifested. You're manifesting it as best you can here, and you're staying in the conversation. Yeah. If I'm an old style planner, I've got, this is the way to do it because I figured that out 10 years ago and here's my paper. You know, if that's an extreme example, but there are people out there doing that. If I stick with my old plan because my numbers used to work, I will fail.
Christine.
So Marty, I really appreciate the dialogue that you're bringing. And Kathy, where you and I left off on a conversation about complexity, and is bringing what Marty's talking about, is bringing that up again. My background is in data and information management, which is about complexity and artificial intelligence. And one of the things that came up for me as I was giving a workshop last week is this idea about data silos, which is all about separate, right? And one of the things in the data space that people wrestle with is the complexity of big data, right? And in 30 years that I've been in the data space, data silos, the siloing of data where everyone wants it central, and central is really the thing that you want people to do because it's where clean data exists. People insist on siloing data. And one of the things that I've come to accept is that in the complexity of data, that silos will always exist because it's too complex. The business is too complex, data is too complex, and the human condition will always try to control it. And so this condition that we can't handle complexity, right? Is pervasive in kind of every discipline. And you talk about this importance of subjectivity, and we sort of know it before we say it, and we know it before we think it. And I'm there. I buy it. I hook, line, and sinker. Like I'm there. And yet, all throughout history, you go back to Confucianism, you go back to the Greeks. Humans have always overvalued intellect over intuition. And why is that? Even the indigenous, like, I mean, I'm talking about society. I'm not saying that the subjective doesn't have value. I'm saying that when it comes right down to it, that what is able to be put on paper or a coin or something tangible somehow always wins. And I'm frustrated and confused by that because it's like, I know that the subjective is the right is the right skill. Like I'm out there selling adaptive thinking, right? So it's a hard sell, believe me.
I know. I feel you. Yeah.
But I'm struggling with this because it's this human condition seems to not accept it.
Okay, let me help you out here. I hope I'll help you out here. I really feel you. I feel that frustration with what's happened to human consciousness. So let me come back to that little piece of neurophysiology that I was describing, and this tiny little portion of the modern human brain that, for a very good reason, processes things in linear fashion and always has to choose between A or B or B prime. It cannot hold two things in awareness at once, period. Now, humans have not always been that way. You have to go before the Greeks and before people who had written language. You have to go to the earliest magnificent human cultures who did extraordinary things. And they did not focus on language, which tends to bring us to the prefrontal cortex and to that little tiny linear part of our brains. They lived in experience and they were magnificently powerful. What we're struggling with in the modern world is more than 2,000 years of linearization and a culture-wide tragedy of having withdrawn our awareness from nature. So we no longer understand or experience our capacity to live in complex interrelationships. We don't understand that this teaching from the Andes is that wisdom is encoded in beauty. And if you walk out into nature, what do you see but beauty? And if you really look at a wild orchid, oh my God, what complexity, what beauty. It's like stunning. And every little piece of thing that just shakes you up and melts you in awe is wisdom. That the flower is the shape and the color and the size and everything that it is because that's how it thrives. And we have withdrawn our awareness from that. And so and you have to be taught this. Let me say this. When you're born an infant, you're learning 10,000 times faster than you learn once you have language. But even then, you do not know how to actually be fully conscious. You have to be taught as you come into your childhood and you grow into adolescence, you have to be taught again how to use your awareness. You have language at that point, but you have to be taught again how to make relationship with a big system. You have to be taught again the levels of energetic connections that exist in the world and how to create yours and maintain them. We have to be taught this stuff. Yeah. And we no longer teach this. We've thrown all the wisdom away. So we're living, Christine, I so feel you. We're living in a world where we are missing like 98% of the wisdom that we need. The wisdom at principle level. Nobody has it. And if we don't have it, we don't know what we don't know. Humans have the capacity. I can feel, Christine, what you know about data. I can feel it. It's brilliant. And I know that humans are designed to know that in the way that you know. But the missing ingredient, this is from my perspective as I train people, the missing ingredient is how do you use awareness? So you live into your experience and your natural capacity. You cannot live by thinking. There's a Shakespeare line. I don't know if it's from Hamlet or something else. I can no longer live by thinking. One of the tragic characters says that, something like that. Yeah. But what we need to do is instead of, well, I don't know, this is going to be like a stupid statement for a moment here, because so many of us are faced with, we've got a big skill, we've got a lot to offer the world, and we've got like 98% of our clients are not conscious. What the hell are we going to do? But what we need to do is to track, and you guys all have the capacity, you need to track for the people who are like big rhododendron or lotus buds about to blossom. You can feel they've got the energy to get it, and then you educate them. Not about your core skill, but you educate them how to be aware of the kind of information that you work with, and then you teach them what that information can do. There needs to be awareness training, and I mean active, dynamic, on the fly, aware as you're working. I don't mean silent meditation. But boy, I feel you, and we're living at a time when most of the world is incapable of understanding what we're saying.
But this has always been the case. This was the case in the 70s, the 50s, the 30s, the 70s. Like this has been like every 20, 30 years we've been unconscious. And this is the worst it's ever been.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it feels it feels like this slow numbing, you know.
I would encourage you two things for all of you. Have a much, much bigger timeline in your awareness, because humans have not always been like this. Where would we have any record of the organizing principles of consciousness if humans had always been linear like we are now? We have not always been like this. That's number one. Number two, keep your radar screen really big, because the only thing that's going to help us is to track for what's working and who's awake enough to do it. If we focus on what is not working, that is the only thing we get. And the value of a beautiful group like this, Kathy, I just have to keep honoring you for gathering such brilliant people. I love this. The value of this kind of group is you can share with one another what it looks like when you identify a client who's starting to light up. Because modern people look different. A modern conscious person looks different than an old Alta Masiac from Chua Chua in the Andes. We look different. It's the same, but we live in a different world, so we've got different characteristics. But we need to help one another identify where the light's starting to appear. That's the only thing.
We look bitter and frustrated as well.
Well, look, I know it's frustrating. Here's a metaphor that all my guides gave me once. I live on about 7 acres of beautiful forest and meadow and stuff. And my meadow out here, there's a green season here in California, and the meadow's really green and beautiful. And then summer comes and it all dries up and turns brown, and it's really ugly. And then the rains come again, and the new grass starts to come up through the old brown grass. And the new grass does not stop to worry about all the old dead grass. It doesn't stop for a second. It doesn't stop to paint it green and prop it up. It doesn't say, oh, gee, can we go back to when it used to be green? The new grass is the new grass, and that is the new green. We are the new grass. Stop worrying about what doesn't work and look for what does work. And this is the principle of investing in what the elders call fertility, potentiality. Invest in potentiality in such a way that you create not just one new thing, but multiple new things for everybody you're working with and for yourself. And if you're unable to do that, go someplace else. Yeah, the saying in the Andes is, if you can't grow corn with it, pass it by. And again, here's how are we assembling reality? Are you assembling reality by being driven to fix what's broken? Or do you assemble reality by searching out potentiality and investing in that?
One of the things that I don't find the assembling of reality to be well, many days my reality is pretty clear, pretty accessible, anchored in nature, anchored in a larger kind of pattern of dynamics that I kind of feel or intuit. But there are days when the other realities, messages that are around us, that they kind of flood the zone.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find your path back to what generally kind of guides you. And I was curious if you have any thoughts on that process and what we can maybe do to.
Yeah, that's a really big point. And I'm constantly faced with this when I go to Peru to work with the masters there in particular. We live in a really, really different world, and they know it. And even my colleagues who go in that group, they go looking at the masters, oh, give us the answer, great ones. And they say, look, you white people, we can teach you the principles of consciousness and we can teach you the technologies of awareness, but you got to figure out your own problems because we don't know your world. And they honor the fact that we have the strength to show up and learn this stuff and the courage to come back into this crazy ass world we've created and say, okay, what do we do now? It is very hard. in our world. It's harder than anything the masters I know ever dealt with. And so we will get blown off our feet from time to time. We will like inadvertently look at a headline and go, God, why did I look at the news? Right. Or we'll realize our neighbors or whatever. The best thing that we can do is gather like this and share without competition, share what we're learning, share what it looks like for each of you when you find something that works, when you see a conscious client, when you've been able to create multiplicities of return because you invested in potentiality, and share your challenges because our challenges even are different. You know, if I were an old-time Alta Masayoc like Don Manuel Quispe, if I did an offering wrong, I might get struck by a lightning bolt. Literally, I know Pacos who've been struck by lightning because they didn't do the offering right, and they're in such direct conversation with the powers of nature, they get struck by lightning. Well, for us, getting struck by lightning looks different. Yeah, for us, getting struck by lightning might be you lose your biggest client overnight. And it's not because you're incompetent. It's because you've touched on some aspect of consciousness that we haven't seen before. And if we can identify that, we can start to heal it. And so these conversations that we're having, if we can keep them at this exploratory and what I call technical level, I want to find out what actually works. What are the conditions? And I want to help people understand the energies that are moving and the principles of consciousness that are working or not working. Because if we understand at that level, well, we can make a big, big difference. We can take quantum leaps. But we need to be in these conversations. So, Kathy, again, I just really honor you for bringing together such beautiful groups. This is our mystery school right here.
And I want to recognize Daniel and Mary Ann who helped me hold the space for this work too. Mary Ann.
Yeah.
You're unmute.
Oh, you're muted.
A couple of times, Marty, as you were talking, you used thoughts that sound familiar to me without having heard them before. In that, I think from, again, my own observation of myself is that it's important for us to remove the filters on our senses, our self-reliance on our brain, and to encourage, because, and I use this word intentionally, I have this continual sense that myself has waited for me to trust my senses, to acknowledge that the really significant thing is to use all of them and yet realize that it's bigger than all of my individual senses at work. It's those moments that we glimpse when we walk into a room and we feel it, or we can feel an individual. But I think I can be bigger than that. I think all of us can be bigger than that if we let go of that thinking on a continual basis and acknowledge that it's not only the beauty of our senses, but it's the beauty in the ability to allow them to guide us, because it's about trusting our own ability. If that's making sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to start on a little bit of thin ice here with the word trust, because most modern people end up
And I
with that
held
word.
back from that.
How do you trust?
Yep.
Neurologically, and I'm saying that because it's not a matter of your ego or your emotions or are you good enough or not. Neurologically, trust follows experience. You cannot have trust before experience. Give it up, right? You have to step into the experience. And our senses, our basic physical senses, which includes what the Pacos call your inner knower channel, when you just know something. Those senses are our primary conduit to knowing the world. They are the primary way through which we connect to the world. You are collecting literally hundreds of millions of data bits per second through your senses. It is being received into your energy architecture way before it gets to your brain. Every data bit is recorded forever, and your architecture and your brain together are constantly mixing and matching and bringing data bits together and creating new ideas and understanding things that are 1,000 miles away from you. It's all inside you. It's all recorded. And the reason we don't trust it is that we have not been taught how to use our awareness to be in the experience of that sensory intelligence. We don't know how to experience it. By the time you get to thinking, your prefrontal cortex, this is a horrible part of human anatomy, and if I ever meet God, I'm going to ask her what the hell she was thinking. The prefrontal cortex has a straight shot superhighway, not even a crossover to your limbic fear circuit. So the most developed part of our brain is linked directly with a hotline to the most primitive part of your brain. If you're living here, you're going to be reactive. If you learn to use your senses, again, this requires training. You have to be taught, right? If you learn to live through your sensing intelligence, which is immediate, you are less reactive, you are more intelligent, and a lot of the questions that we carry begin to dissolve away. We find we do trust it because we've allowed some experience. So, Mary Ellen, you're right on a very, very important point. Yeah. Maria, you have a question.
No, just maybe to add to the school of mystery, also to be in that position, at least for, in my case, is that this balance between the ego and your heart, and it's coming back to this place and act from there. And it's not just acting from the heart, but build from it. So creating a space for silence every day, because Marti was sharing, you have all that on your field, you have the codes, the information is there. So in order to sort of like bringing it down, you can just bring it down or to your mind from your heart, but also from a space full of silence. So when the mind is busy, all this information also can be distorted. And that is why also the ego comes, and a bit of related between Andes on the past civilizations and what is happening now as well.
Yeah, beautifully said. The ego structure for humans it's unique. And the reason we have the ego structure, it's a principle from developmental biology that the more complex the organism, the longer it needs to stay in the nest. And if you need to stay in the nest in order to mature, you have to be identifiable, bondable, recognizable, lovable, dependable. That's what the ego structure is for. That is it. But if all your awareness is mushed into that linear part of your brain, guess where the ego structure is? It's in the linear part of your brain, and it's glued to the limbic fear circuit. So if you're living in that linear processing, you are ego bound, you are fear bound, you're definitely not fully conscious. And if you can get your awareness off yourself, this is a big point Maria is bringing up, that inner dialogue, the yakety yak that happens when we're just talking to ourselves, the yakety yak goes away. And as the Yaquis in central Mexico say, if you can get your awareness off yourself and stop that inner dialogue, everything is possible. That's when you're coming from the heart. And the heart in the Andes, they say that the human heart and the principle of unconditional love, we have a center in our energy architecture that is designed to emit, quote unquote, love, the energy of love. It's called munai in Quechua. And it's a specific amplitude and frequency of energy. When we're not ego bound, we emit this. And this energy heat seeks places it can connect and amplify itself. And you know those places when you're just relaxed, your moments you're relaxed, and the world might be a mess, but you're just accepting everything as it is. You're not fighting it. You know that feeling of, yeah. For some insane reason, you feel fulfilled. Everything's okay. There's nothing to fight. You're fine. That's unconditional love. And it's an energy and it's a principle of consciousness. So Maria, thank you for that.
How about some folks who haven't talked yet? You have some connections to some of this?
Oh, for sure. I'm sitting over here. I know alternately I look like I'm the stone faced because I'm taking a couple of notes and alternately just smiling from ear to ear. Just a question, Mark. I mean, you're catching me at a time where I feel like I'm exemplifying the change that you wish to see in the world. And I don't say that to like seem big, but I somebody who about a year and a half ago gave up a job that kept me in the external and linear fear of performance and comparison and absolute misery. And I was called back to a new path through nature. And
great.
I've had some guidance along the way, but a lot of it is just creating time and space to notice and be me and to not be busy and to give up most of my friends. And strangely enough, it doesn't feel lonely.
Yeah.
And so I'm in a space where I just am filled up by, my light is attracted to what you're saying and just in the way that you're encouraging us to be, right? To bend toward that which makes our interiority sort of flutter. And so wonderful to hear your words. It's exactly what I needed today. And I can't wait to find out more about what you do in the world. And I thank you.
Great, great. Oh, Sonia, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. That's growing corn, passing by what doesn't grow corn, investing in potentiality, investing in that field where you'll have a bountiful outcome every time.
It's bewildering. It's bewildering too. It's absolutely confusing and bewildering because, like, who are my people now? And actually not just people, right? But animals and plants. Who are my people, like with a capital P, like all living beings? I'm not thinking it's just people any longer.
It's true. It's not just people any longer. And, I think when we gather like this, we feel we are one another's people. And we're a little bit rare in the world today, but that's okay. But pay attention to signs in nature. You're probably already doing this, and when that hawk keeps flying and landing on your property, that's for you. That's just one example. Yeah. Oh, I love your courage and your heart. Thank you, Sonia.
Likewise,
That's great.
thank you.
Yeah.
I would
Can
share
I-
a couple of things.
Sean, you have
Oh,
a
yeah.
curious.
I have a quote from Dune that I just love. I think it's Kierkegaard originally, but it's the mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience. A process cannot be understood by stopping it. We must move within the flow of the process. We must join it. We must flow with it. Kathy knows I resist strategic planning like crazy because I'm like always strategic planning. I don't know what you people want. This is what I do, right? But I was also thinking I've recently moved from paddling flat water to paddling swift water, so river paddling. And certainly when you're paddling on flat water, you are paddling with the water, right? It's supporting you. You choose a canoe that cuts forward. But when you're in white water, it's a whole different dynamic of using the power of the water to propel yourself and move yourself either into or out of, up, down, left, right. It's an amazing dynamic that
Yeah.
that is that's what I'm thinking about in this conversation.
Oh God, I love it. I'm a paddler too, so I love that. Yeah, and on the rivers, it's not just that we're using those currents to move ourselves, it's that we're learning how the complex universe actually moves things. And we're making relationship with a complex system and becoming part of it.
We are in it. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's great to meet another paddler. Great. Thank you, Sean. Yeah.
And I think there's this this idea that we should fear complexity, or that complexity is too overwhelming for us. What we don't recognize is that we've lived our whole entire lives within a complex ecosystem that surrounds us, that we have no problem negotiating or navigating. I was thinking about spring as a complex system with all its movement and growth and uncontrollability and yet beauty, wholeness, affirmation that we grow and we have more cycles and seasons to us. And and what is it about our human organization? What is it about our human organizations that we try to leach all of the complexity out of it, maybe also leach all the consciousness? Why do we structure our organizations to reinforce sleepwalking to work?
Yeah, I love that.
It's
it's the same thing we've been talking about. If awareness is sitting in that tiny little linear A to B level of information processing, nothing else is possible. You can't even see interrelationships in the world. You can only see A or B. And remember that linear part of the brain is smack next door to the limbic fear circuit. So if you try to ram in some complexity, the limbic fear circuit goes off. And you know what happens when your limbic fear circuit fires? In your brainstem, the most reptilian part of you, the limbic fear circuit releases monoamines. It's a kind of neurotransmitter. And those monoamines take over your entire brain in a nanosecond. And the only message is fight, flight, or freeze. You cannot negotiate with a client if they're in that state. And so instead of looking at, oh, what do we do with the organization? What do we do with this? What do we do with that? My mission is let's take a look at who can crack open their awareness and learn to be conscious again. Then all of the things we're trying to do in business will happen. So it's not so much how do we fix business, it's how do we wake people up? Well, who are the people who are willing to wake up? Yeah, I think that is the more critical question. And I saw something in the chat from Christine about now that people are postponing milestones past 35. There's something really important that Malidoma Somé used to say to me. He used to say, it doesn't matter when you do it, it matters that you do it. And he would look at Western culture. We used to talk about this, that the original Dagara culture initiations for their young people, they're so like Hogwartsian, we can't even imagine. Like you jump into fire and you end up in the underworld, or you go into a cave and dive into a deep spring and you're in there for 3 hours underwater talking to spirits and you come out 10 miles away. And I don't know, these things really happened in West Africa. And I said to him, we couldn't survive those initiations. And he looked at me and he said, we could no more survive your initiation.
wow.
And what he meant was that for Western people, the lack of training of awareness when we're young puts us into basically a 50-year initiation, struggling on a quarter of a cylinder, if you want to use an engine analogy, a pinch of awareness that only processes A to B, and we're supposed to find our way in the world and mature and blossom. Holy moly.
So you're saying because we're subsisting on such little awareness that our milestones are being put farther and farther out.
Yeah, we don't know how to blossom our vision. We still have visions. We still have dreams. We
Yeah.
know who we are, but we haven't unfurled the dimensions of our own consciousness that would naturally blossom those visions. Yeah. And you can't get there by thinking, and you cannot get there by reason or strategy.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
we are out of time, unfortunately. I just wanted to thank you so much for being willing to come back and talk.
Always.
And she had said earlier that she'd even be open to coming back and filling our open space in September to share some more thinking if maybe we'll just pencil her into that. So that's all great.
Yeah, that would
Thank
be
you so much for provoking us. And I love the idea of working with the people who are about ready to bloom, the buds.
Mhm.
I had a conversation with a client the other day that I was able to attend her regional and country director retreat in March. I was so impressed with her people, but there were a handful of folks that were thinking in highly complex, beautiful, holistic, integrated ways. And she said, a year and a half ago, they weren't like that because they had a person who was leading them that was dampening everything down, and they just were not able to bring their voices or their ideas to the organization. And when that person was removed, an opportunity to
Mhm.
allow them to blossom, to create a space, a spaciousness and a space for them to share what they were really thinking. And I saw them 12 to 18 months later, and I was like totally stunned with how
Yeah,
they were showing up in the world and thinking about the work
beautiful.
in both these intuitive, um, I think partly African inspired kind of worldviews that were also enhancing what they could show up with. So
Mhm.
I love that idea that you've invited us in terms of what should we be paying attention to and looking at. So
Yeah.
next month, we're going to have Daniel come and talk about the state of sustainability in the world. And I'm looking forward to that. Um, and Marty, thank you so much for this beautiful way you have of provoking the way we think and inviting
My
us.
pleasure. My pleasure. And I want to thank all of you for participating so beautifully. This is one of the best dialogues that I've been in a very, very long time. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to get a copy of this recording, put your email in the chat and I will send it to you as soon as it's ready.